Becky and Nathan, I want you to know that last week, when you were not here, there were no musicians here. There was Jane Londy standing right here. Alan Londy was here, and we led the services. And, okay, so some of you were here. No one was asking for an encore. There were not going to be any signs saying, we want them back next week. But we did it.
You have a nice voice, Alan. You do.
You know, okay, let me tell you something, though, about my nice voice. I have a nice voice, but Becky and Nathan say that any time that they get up, I have to turn off my microphone. Now, okay, wait a minute. Okay, Nathan. Okay, Nathan, you're back there hiding. Was I given that information at the beginning of services this evening?
Just responding to feedback from our online viewers.
Okay, so we're going to put this to bed now. We're delighted you're back. I will do everything in my power not to use the mic in the wrong times, and we're going to move forward. I'm just going to breathe it out, and we're going to go forward. Okay, is that good? Okay, good. So over the past 41 years, I've done a lot of pastoral counseling. And there's one biblical figure that visits me continuously. And it's not an apparition. It is the first child of Abraham, Ishmael. His son born to him through Sarah's concubine Hagar, an Egyptian. And I'm not speaking, as I said, about an apparition, but nevertheless, many people come to me because they feel like Ishmael. They're the secondary child. The son and daughter who feels that another sibling is loved more and treated better than they have been treated. And let me tell you, when you're across from an Ishmael, it is very painful and is very hurtful, and it's really troubling to hear it. And I can relate to it because I'm a younger brother, and at times I felt like Ishmael too. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. Perception's reality. Sometimes, as Ishmael, I felt like an afterthought. Now, the plight of Ishmael is horrible in the story of the Torah that we read about. He's brought into this world, and immediately he is the victim. Sarah mistreats him. Hagar runs away with Ishmael because Sarah is so cruel to her. But an angel of the Lord encourages Hagar to come back. Isaac is born. And Sarah forces Abraham to banish them, even though the Torah tells us that Abraham was distressed by this. And the Torah tells us about Ishmael, God was with him, and he grew up in the wilderness as a hunter. And Hagar found a wife for him from the land of Egypt. But what happens to Ishmael then? The Bible doesn't tell us. But the question of what happens to Ishmael is an important one. If not for us as Jews, then surely for more than 1 billion people in the world who are followers of Islam. For more than 1 billion people in the world who are Arabs and consider themselves descendants of Ishmael. Ishmael is seen as the founder of the Arab people. And whether that's true or not, that's the perception. That is what is said. Now, Islamic literature answers the question. Here is an Islamic version of what happened to Ishmael offered by Ibn Kashir, a great Muslim thinker, writer from the 12th century. So this Islamic scholar gives us the backstory that we don't know is in the Torah. Let me read it to you. After Hagar and Ishmael were banished from Abraham's home, Abraham went to visit him to see how he and his family were doing. Abraham cared about him. He was his son. And when Abraham came to Ishmael's home, he didn't find Ishmael, but he did find Ishmael's wife. And when Abraham asked her how they were doing, she said, "We're living in misery. We are living in hardship and destitution." And Abraham said to her, "When your husband returns, tell him a guest was here, and tell him to change the threshold of his house." Now the story goes on that when Ishmael returned home, he felt something unusual had happened and asked his wife, "Has anyone visited you?" And she said, "Yes, an old man," and gave a description. And she retold their conversation, what she had said and what Abraham had said. And after hearing this, Ishmael said, "It was my father, and he has ordered me to divorce you." And he did. Ishmael could tell that his father had found his wife to be inhospitable and insensitive. See, I put it this way. He thought to himself, couldn't he have offered my father like a Danish and some coffee? So he divorced her. Abraham was a model of hospitality, and that's how he judged all people. And so Islamic tradition continues, and I quote, "Then Abraham stayed away from them for a period as long as Allah wished, and called on them again, but again did not find Ishmael, who was away. So once again, he had the same kind of conversation with Ishmael's new wife, asking how they were doing, and she replied, 'We are prosperous and well off.' Then she thanked Allah. This time, Abraham said to Ishmael's wife, 'When your husband returns, give him my regards to him, and tell him he should keep firm the threshold of his gate.' Once again, when Ishmael returned home, his wife told him what had happened, and Ishmael said, 'It is my father, and you are at the threshold of the gate, and he has ordered me to keep you with me.'" That's the story. Now, what an incredible story on so many different levels. Abraham continues his relationship with Ishmael and his family. The Torah doesn't talk about that. But Islamic tradition says, no, Abraham had a relationship with Ishmael and his family. Abraham really loved Ishmael and cared about him and went on visiting him and gave him advice and blessings. The idea that Abraham loved Isaac and banished Ishmael is false, at least according to Islamic tradition. And to go to its logical conclusion, Arabs and Jews are not destined to hate each other. Ishmael is not a second-class citizen. Abraham really cares about Ishmael, and thus the founder of the Arab people is loved by Abraham as much as Abraham loves Isaac. Now, I'm quoting from Islamic text, but Jewish tradition has the same story. There is a midrashic text of about a rabbinic interpretation, it's hard to describe what a midrash is, which is about 1,000 years old, called Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. And it tells the same story about Abraham and Ishmael as found in the Islamic text. Almost identical, with a few little variations. So if you want a complete version of that story, I can provide it to you. There's an article by a brilliant professor of Islamic tradition, a Reform rabbi at the Hebrew College in Los Angeles named Ruvain Firestone. I can give you the text, and he describes exactly what Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says, which is almost identical to the Islamic tradition. Now, Jewish tradition even goes further. According to the Midrash, the wife that Abraham married after Sarah's death is Keturah, who was really Hagar. He marries Hagar. Isn't that interesting? That's what the rabbis say. And we do know that Isaac and Ishmael unite to bury Abraham at the end of his life. Now, why should I teach this text tonight? First of all, I like text, so I got that off my chest. Because we need hope. We need hope. We need to envision a possible future as distant as it appears, and with a path to it that seems unclear at this moment. But we need to have hope. Now, Israel is fighting a war of self-defense against Hamas, which represents, as I have said many times, a distorted, radicalized, hateful version of Islam. The war is not a war between Muslims and Jews and Islam and Judaism. When we start saying that, first of all, we're telling a lie, and it's not what's really going on. It's between the state of Israel that must save its nation and Hamas, who want to kill every Jew. But I believe that we should hold on to the vision of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, whose third yurtzeit we observed this past week, who wrote, "God has spoken to mankind in many languages, through Judaism, the Jews, Christianity to Christians, Islam to Muslims. No one creed has a monopoly of a spiritual truth. In heaven there is truth, on earth there are truths. God is greater than religion. He is only partially comprehended by any faith." So on a deep level, the future is grounded in this story about Abraham and Ishmael. Abraham has two honored sons, Isaac and Ishmael. Was it not the prophet Malachi who said, "Do we not all have one Father? Has not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously each against his brother so as to profane the covenant of our fathers?" Now, friends, as we continue to recall the brutality of October 7th, as we are determined to get back the hostages, as we fight to defeat Hamas, as we fear for the safety of Israel, as we mourn the suffering and death of Gazans, especially innocent children who are victims of this conflict, as we pray for some form of reconciliation rooted in security and realism, on this Shabbat, let us affirm that the seeds of commonality already exist. I don't expect them to happen tomorrow or next week or even in a month. But the seeds of commonality exist. The seeds of healing do exist. And if somehow we can overcome history, we can get beyond all of it, may God somehow lead us to that day, even though it seems so far away. Shabbat Shalom. Now, last week, before we continue with the adoration, last week, I shared a prayer that was composed by Rabbi Levi Kelman, who is a rabbi in Israel, one of the leading Reform rabbis in Israel, who wrote a very beautiful prayer for the Gazans, showing what was spiritually happening in Israel. Because we don't fully grasp what is happening in Israel. There is such a profound commitment to the defense of the state of Israel and the unity related to the defense of the state of Israel. But there's also, not among everyone, but among people that I have deep respect for, a profound concern about the suffering that has been caused by this war. And I'm not here to pass judgment on what the Israeli Defense Force does or doesn't do. Some will agree, some will disagree. That's for a discussion outside of the sanctuary. But I think we should be mindful, as the Rabbi Kelman is, of the suffering. Because we come here with the belief that all human beings are created in the image of God. And war gets in the middle of that. But we can't forget that because of war. So I asked Glenn to read this prayer to us again, and I think it's really very beautiful prayer.
If there has ever been a time for prayer, this is that time. If there has ever been a place forsaken, Gaza is that place. Lord, who is the creator of all children, hear our prayer this accursed day. God, whom we call blessed, turn your face to these, the children of Gaza, that they may know your blessings and your shelter, that they may know light and warmth, where there is now only blackness and smoke, and a cold which cuts and clenches the skin. Almighty, who makes exceptions, which we call miracles, make an exception of the children of Gaza. Shield them from us and from their own. Spare them, heal them, let them stand in safety. Deliver them from hunger and horror and fury and grief. Deliver them from us and from their own. Restore to them their stolen childhoods, their birthright, which is a taste of heaven. Remind us, O Lord, of the child Ishmael, who is the father of all the children of Gaza. How the child Ishmael was without water and left for dead in the wilderness of Beersheba, so robbed of all hope that his own mother could not bear to watch his life drain away. Be that Lord, the God of our kinsman Ishmael, who heard his cry and sent his angel to comfort his mother Hagar. Be that Lord, who was with Ishmael that day and all the days after. Be that God, the all-merciful, who opened Hagar's eyes that day and showed her the well of water, that she could give the boy Ishmael to drink and save his life. Allah, whose name we call Elohim, who gives life, who knows the value and the fragility of every life, send these children your angels. Save them, the children of this place, Gaza the most beautiful, and Gaza the damned. In this day, when the trepidation and rage and mourning that is called war seizes our hearts and patches them in scars, we call to you, the Lord whose name is peace. Bless these children and keep them from harm. Turn your face toward them, O Lord. Show them, as if for the first time, light and kindness and overwhelming graciousness. Look up at them, Lord. Let them see your face.